Purdue fans. This is Johnny DeCamp bringing you play-by-play the rousing...
Everybody, along with Ron Kramer, this is Pete Van Wieren welcoming you to Ross-Ade Stadium.
Live from Ross-Ade Stadium in West Lafayette, Indiana.
It's a football Saturday in West Lafayette, Indiana, and one of the biggest home games in decades.
Boilermakers rush the field. What a night at West Lafayette.
Your Central Indiana Ford dealers are a proud sponsor of Purdue football and the Ross-Ade's Greatest Games podcast. Visit your local Central Indiana Ford dealer today. Welcome back to the Ross-Ade's Greatest Games podcast. I'm Corey Palm. He's Tim Newton, and we are going through some of the greatest games that have ever graced the field of our glorious Ross-Ade Stadium here in the 100th season. Well, the 101st season.
101st season,
100th
yes.
year of the stadium's weird math there.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. Well, today we've got a fun game to talk about, Tim, and it was a fun game that kind of helped turn around what started off to be a really fun season, and then took a turn. We're going back to 2004 Ohio State.
Yeah, when you talk about 2004, what a great start that year. Purdue got off to a terrific start, including a dominant win at Notre Dame. Kyle Orton at one point was the Heisman Trophy favorite. Yep. And then Wisconsin came to town with game day, and we've all heard and really tired of talking about the fumble, but that started a little bit of a spiral where Purdue went on a losing streak. Then the game we're talking about today was, again, one of the bright lights in the second half of that season, a big win against Ohio State.
It was, and a part of that losing streak that will actually plays a major part in our story today is the Boilermakers lost to Wisconsin, lost a heartbreaker to Michigan the following week, and then went to Northwestern where Kyle got hurt.
Yeah.
Kyle Orton, Heisman Trophy, candidate at one point, All-American candidate at one point, having a fantastic year, and he gets a hip injury against the Cats in that heartbreaking loss. Has to miss the game at Iowa, which was a homecoming of sorts, being a Des Moines area native. That really hurt. Not being able to play the Hawkeyes and actually missed the start against the Buckeyes as well.
Yeah, I go back real quickly about that Northwestern game, the game in which he got hurt. Northwestern scored on its first drive of the game. Northwestern scored on its last drive of the game. The rest of the game, they couldn't get out of their way. Yeah. I mean, Purdue's defense was completely dominant, but unfortunately, Purdue's offense struggled. I remember it was a really windy day at the old Ryan Field, and I just remember watching, it was like a dust devil in front of us, a tornado of debris that just went the entire game. And unfortunately, again, it was another loss for Purdue in that string of 4 straight losses, and brought us to where you needed a win over Ohio State to try to salvage the season.
Absolutely. You come in on that skid, and with sophomore backup quarterback Brandon Kirsch getting his second start of the season, things actually started off really well for the Boilermakers against the Buckeyes that night. Purdue got up to a 17-3 lead at the half, actually, and two Kirsch to Kyle Ingram touchdowns. Kyle Ingram's kind of been forgotten in time, but he was a lot of fun to watch.
He was a lot of fun to watch. You don't have a lot of 6'9" receivers that play, and he was one. The one you go back. Kyle Ingram had great size, and Kyle Orton was able to throw the ball and up to him. I go back. Drew Brees, the one thing Drew Brees could not do here, and I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but it just reminded me because of Kyle Ingram's side, couldn't throw the jump ball.
Oh, really?
Couldn't throw the fade. Could not do it here. Could throw every single other pass, but could not throw the fade ever during his time. Now, he got better at it when he got to the pros, but when he was in West Lafayette, I'm not sure he completed a single one.
He wouldn't have been good with Kyle Ingram then.
No,
for sure. Ingram with a couple nice touchdown catches, like we said. Santonio Holmes got one back in the third quarter for the Buckeyes to make it 17-10. A lot of talent on this Ohio State team.
Yeah, when you go back and do these games, it's kind of fun to go back and say, yeah, I've heard of Santonio Holmes. He's pretty good in a Super Bowl win.
Okay.
It is amazing to see the kind of talent that has been in the Big Ten, and when you play a team again like Ohio State, you can go down the roster and you recognize the names 20 years later.
Absolutely. It's 17-10 going into the fourth, and both teams sort of trade turnovers as the defenses took hold. A lot of talent on both defenses that day as well, and it's the Boilermakers are holding on to a lead late, and Brandon Kirsch with a lead throws an interception, and it was just a killer. Under 8 minutes to go, throws a pick. It leads to a future Heisman Trophy winner Troy Smith rushing for the tying score with under 4 minutes to go, and Coach Tiller made a call.
Yeah, at that point you're thinking, boy, you don't want this game to go to overtime, and could we even get it to overtime? Because if Purdue has to punt the ball away, Ohio State's on a roll here. He decides to bring Kyle Orton in from the injured list, and he comes in for that last drive. And there are a lot of reasons you become legendary at a place, and a fourth quarter game-winning drive against Ohio State is on that list.
Absolutely, Orton comes in 6 for 6 on the drive for 50 yards, and gets the go-ahead touchdown pass to little used. Highly thought of, but little used freshman tight end Dustin Keller. Keller's only catch of the day for 14 yards in the score. He will be joining us later in the show to talk about that day. He remembers that play vividly, and the rest of his career. It's a great conversation. Stick around for that. But Keller was a converted wide receiver to tight end. His recruiting story is legendary. One of the last scholarships, if not the last, offered. Local kid from Lafayette, Jeff, and stayed a hometown hero. A lot of his legend started to grow that day.
Yeah, he had committed to Toledo. Originally was waiting for a Purdue offer, and the Purdue offer came late, and he jumped on it, and Boilermaker fans were happy because wound up having a great career at Purdue and then played a few years in the NFL as well.
Yep. Keller, 14-yard touchdown. Stanford Kegler gets an interception late. One of 4 turnovers by the Purdue defense that day, and that interception seals the deal. It was a great win to turn around the season. The Boilermakers went on to destroy Indiana the next week. In a game we've talked about on this podcast was Taylor Stubblefield, but it really a good feeling in the stadium that day. I was actually in the stadium that day. Went to the game with my dad and sat near the student section. It was wild. But a really good win for Purdue. Yeah,
the Boilermakers, again, anytime you can beat Ohio State anywhere, it doesn't matter the circumstances. But, we've talked over the years and Purdue's reputation throwing the ball, and we've talked about the defense of those 2 years. But that even after the interception by Kegler, the Boilermakers had to get a first down to salt the clock, and they ran the ball 4 straight times, and they got a first down on a Gerard Voigt on a 4th down play, and then you go to a kneel down after that. So when they had to, at times, Purdue was able to run and do what they had to do. And Gerard Voigt was a big part of that for several years there for the Boilermakers. He was a touchdown machine. Man, you get out near the goal line, number 32 was going to find a way to get in. Absolutely. It was Coach Joe Tiller's 100th career win as a head coach, and obviously he went on to quite a few more after that, but that one was special, like you said, beating the Buckeyes. And being a kid from Toledo. Yeah. So he beating that hometown team, I'm sure, made it a little bit sweeter. Definitely. Any final thoughts on that game that season? The Boilermakers went on to a Sun Bowl appearance, which was a tough consolation for where we thought the season was going to end. And that game was a microcosm, too, because, again, Purdue, in an up-and-down game, winds up on the short end. That 2004 season, I'm not sure there was ever such an up-and-down season. I mean, you went from the incredible highs of you've got a Heisman Trophy winner or a Heisman Trophy candidate favorite. You've got game day here. You're undefeated. You're ranked in the top 5. You go on a losing streak. You come up with a couple wins at the end of the season. Then you lose your bowl game. So it's certainly a lot to talk about with 2004. Some of it great, some of it not so great. It was. Well, we'll talk about 2004 and the years immediately after that, after the break, with Dustin Keller.
Your Central Indiana Ford dealers are a proud sponsor of Purdue football. Visit your local Central Indiana Ford dealer today.
Joined now by Purdue great Dustin Keller. DK, really appreciate your time here today. And as we look back on, it's hard to believe, 20 years ago, your redshirt freshman season here at Purdue. Welcome back virtually to the Boilermaker campus.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be back. 20 years ago, man. I honestly, in my soul, don't feel old enough to have done anything 20 years ago. But I know that's fiction, so let's do it. I love when people say, when people say 20 years ago, I envision like 1987. No. Yeah, 2004. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how I am too. Yeah. 20 years. I honestly can't believe that there's anything that I can discuss that I did 20 or 30 years ago, but hey, time flies, man. Yep, wild times. Good that we're able to still discuss it, I guess. Upright and Mobile is the place to be. That 2004 season,
Got off to a great start, hit a bit of a skid midway through. We won't relive all of that, but that win in November over Ohio State um, got the season back on track. Of course, closed out with a great bucket win the following week and a bowl trip. When you think about that night, that game against the Buckeyes and sort of what that season was like, what pops into your head?
That season was pretty crazy. It was roller coasters because we started the season. It wasn't really typical for us at Purdue, but we were highly rated on a lot of people's radars, and for good reason. We had a good team. I know Orton had all the Heisman talk during that, and we had a really good team at that point. But I do remember, like you said, we were undefeated going into Wisconsin. I think we were playing them. It was like number 4 versus number 5, and that play came down to just getting first down. Like you said, we won't go into that. We won't hit the details of that. But that started a skid for us, and I think we lost the next 2 or 3 games at that point. And then comes Ohio State, were they 1, 2, or 3 or something in that?
They weren't actually. It was pretty early in the career of a lot of great Buckeye players.
Yeah, I thought they were ranked high.
Yeah, they weren't ranked high that season, but it was still just a phenomenal win. You guys jumped out to an early lead, and then they clawed their way back in. Brendan Kirsch got the start. Orton came on in relief, and
I remember
in that final drive, you had just that one catch that game.
Yeah, I remember, and that was I always try to remember, the order of things, but I had gotten hurt that season. Had a ankle injury. I think I was getting more and more playing time, and it was me and Charles Davis. I got hurt, and he was just kind of full-time the guy.
Yep.
And then at that point, I was slowly being eased back in. And Coach Cheney, he called my number on that play. And I remember the exact play. It was Charles coming in motion, and we were trying to sell the run in the outside zone or a pitch on that play. And I think we call that play the shoot play, but you don't say shoot.
Yep.
And so my whole thing is I'm supposed to act like I slip and I fall. And it was the worst acting I've done in my whole entire life. I look at that play, I'm like, how could they have fallen for that? But I do this little fall, and then I pick back up, I run across, and there I am wide open for that play. And that was fun because that was also, like you said, the linebackers. I think the person that was the first person that would have touched me to make a play on that was A.J. Hawk, who went on and had a great career, who I played against tons of times in the NFL. So it's real fun to look back on that type of thing, especially in a winning effort.
Yeah, absolutely. I was reviewing the video this morning, and I never noticed before that you've slipped and fell on that play. To hear that was part of the design. First of all, what a wild play design to say, hey, you're our primary. We need you to fall down.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I think that it's a play. It's in everybody's playbooks. I don't know if very many people still fall when they do it, because a lot of times people fall on top of you. That play's over.
You're done.
And if you watch that play, it's the worst sell of a fall in history. And I'd like to say it's because I'm a good enough athlete that I don't know how to fall like that.
Right.
But no, that was a huge turning point for us. Things had gone down, and then we really turned things around at that point.
Yep.
Kirsch was playing good football, but I think Orton came back in, and that was a big confidence booster for him.
Yeah, it was. Kyle went, I think 6 for 6 on that drive. He goes 80 yards on 8 plays in like a minute and a half. Like it was awesome. Score the what ended up being the winning touchdown with less than 2 minutes to go. Just a packed Ross-Ade Stadium losing its mind. A lot of celebration. It was just your freshman year, or your first year of playing. I mean, going through all that emotion, and then like you said, coming back from injury, having your number called. Just how much of a confidence boost was it for you to be?
It was huge for me. It was huge for me, and I think that it was it worked out in 2 ways in our favor. As he called my number, and that kind of like, wow, he's putting this moment on me. But at the same time, I hadn't gotten any attention or any balls at all during that game, so it's like, why would it go to this guy?
Right.
And so it worked out really well, and that helped me build my confidence going into the rest of the games and then into the next season. And yeah, because that move to tight end for me was a total Tiller move. I was a wide receiver, and we finished 6 a.m. workouts. It's the first time I started lifting weights ever, really at all. And I started to put on some pounds and everything. I was like 230 pounds as a wide receiver. Coach Tiller came up to me in the weight room. He said, "Keller, step on the scale." And I was 230. He pointed to 230 on the scale. He said, "You're here. I want you right here." I was seeing 250. I'm like, "Oh, 250. That's a big receiver." I'm like, "Oh, wait. He wants me to play tight end."
Mhm.
And so in the spring, we made the slow move over there, but it was the best thing. Got me on the field the fastest and went from a okay speed receiver to a fast tight end. And I could never thank him enough for making that move.
Yeah. Yeah. It really paid off. You were kind of we'll get into the NFL stuff. You were kind of on the front edge of the more athletic, less blocking, or really go out and make plays tight end movement
Yeah.
that caught fire right around then.
Yeah. I think I was fortunate that part of the reason I was able to be a first rounder, I went to the combine, had really good numbers there, but you had the guys like the Antonio Gates, the Tony Gonzalez, and even more so like a Dallas Clark with Indy. Like these guys were making big plays for their teams, great outlets for their quarterbacks. And so people were looking for that kind of guy.
Now you talk about Coach Tiller a little bit there, and obviously the revolutionary change he made for your career. Um, was how big of a factor was he in you deciding to come here? You're a local hero, 3-sport star at Jeff here in Lafayette, and just phenomenal athlete, but not a lot of high D1 offers.
Yeah. It's funny depending on who you ask, you're going to get a different story. There's a lot of people that want to take credit for that.
Of course.
But the Tiller side of the story, his side, that he's told me was that this was just a couple days before National Signing Day, and I was already committed to play football at Toledo. And it was basketball season, and it was like the Friday Night Frenzy that TV18 plays.
Yep.
And so they were watching some highlights from one of my games, and I was catching alley-oops and saw me doing all kinds of dunks in the game. And I guess that was playing in the background while they were having a coaches meeting about recruiting. And Coach Tiller went to Hagan, who was the recruiting coordinator at the time. He said, "Why have we not offered Keller?" Now, this is Tiller's story. I don't know if it really went this way. Every single one of them tells me this story differently, all of them. So why have we not recruited? Why do we not offer Keller a scholarship? And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." I was like, "Well, offer him." So the next day was the day before National Signing Day, and they tried to call me, and they first tried to give me one more push to walk on. I was like, "I've got a scholarship to Toledo. I'm not walking on anywhere." And they're like, "Okay, fine." And he called me back like an hour later. Like, "Okay, we want to offer you." And it was a little bit of a hard decision because Toledo, I was so high on it's called draft board, the recruit board, that I went through there and they showed my whole family love, and there were so many positives about that. But then I couldn't pass up playing in my backyard in Purdue. And I'd actually gotten a letter from somebody in the mail when I switched my commitment from Toledo to Purdue, telling me how much of a foolish mistake it was. At Toledo, you were going to play from the get-go. You were going to be their star receiver. At Purdue, you'll be lucky if junior year if you get on the field for special teams. And I always held on to that letter and used it as motivation. And I think I actually read that letter my senior year. I was voted team MVP, and I read that letter to everybody there, and I said, "Whoever wrote this," because I still don't know exactly who it was, "Thanks for the motivation." But yeah, I think Tiller, back to that question, I think Tiller was a big part of getting me recruited there, but I was the very last scholarship offer in my class. And I think that was also added motivation for me as well.
That's a great, so much fun. I love when stories like that, become legend and everybody wants their part of it. You never quite know where the truth is, but it worked out for everybody involved.
It did, except for Toledo.
Except for Toledo. Yeah, and you got to play there a couple years later, and
actually, and an old Lafayette Jeff guy, he was a quarterback for us, Doug Downing. he was actually the one that was recruiting me, so that made it extra hard because they were on me for years about that, and it was like they were always at the top of my board because they were the best scholarship. They were Division I, and I had the connection with him, and that was an easy call for me until Purdue came knocking.
Well, and you also know, playing football in the MAC, if you're an NFL talent, they'll find you in the MAC.
Absolutely. Because even Toledo's had tons of receivers go to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But that me calling Doug Downing and decommitting to Toledo, I would say it was one of the top 3 hard. At the time, it was the hardest thing I ever had to do, for sure.
Wow.
But since then, there's been business deals and stuff to try to talk about, and those overtake it. Those are a little bit more stressful.
I can imagine. Real life becomes a lot more stressful the older you get. Okay, so moving past 04, you look back at your career at Purdue. You were right there in the heart of the Tiller era. Phenomenal coaches. You had a lot of great teammates. How fondly do you remember your 4 years here on campus?
Oh, I remember my time in college better than I do the time in the NFL. It's kind of the last time that you have these forever bonds. You come in with a class of people, and for the most part, you're with all those people all 4 years. Unless you have a knucklehead. I mean, there was no transfer portal, so those guys are sticking around. You don't have anybody leaving, and unless you're a real knucklehead, your scholarship is renewed every single year. So some of my best friends are college guys that I still keep up with, and I have some NFL guys that I talk to, I still keep up with, but not quite like the college guys.
Yeah. Was it always football for you? Because you were a phenomenal basketball player. You guys had some great teams. State track guy.
Absolutely not. Football was just the opportunity that was there. I loved football, but certainly not as much as basketball.
Okay.
I always kind of saw football as a stepping stone into the next thing for me. And that's not to be that I didn't love it. Again, I didn't love it as much as basketball. Still to this day, basketball is my favorite sport. But I wanted to use it as a stepping stone into business and to different things. But my rookie year with the Jets, me and some of the players, we would, in the offseason, we would play every day. We'd go to Lifetime Fitness and we played basketball almost every single day because, a lot of football players wish that they were basketball players. I know sometimes that's true for basketball players, wish they were football players, but they've got the sweeter deal.
They do.
Got the sweeter deal for sure.
It's a lot nicer on their bodies, let me tell you.
Yeah. So we would play every single day at Lifetime until one day, the next morning we showed up and there was letters in our lockers, and mine said, "Hey, glad you guys are enjoying playing basketball. Just to let you know, if you guys are to get hurt, no play, no pay." We all retired from basketball that day.
Done.
And I haven't played basketball since then. That was 2008, 2009. Okay. I have not played basketball since then.
Man.
Yeah.
You might be able to get back into it now. I don't think the Jets have the kind of sway over you now that they used to.
No. My dream always was, to have a career, make some good deals, and then play in some 40 and over basketball leagues. I just turned 40 last month, so it's I guess my time's now if the old body can hold up.
There you go. Now's the time to get back into it. Let's talk about that NFL career a little bit. You, like you said, you went to the combine and really set that place on fire. You shot up the draft boards into the first round just to go from the final scholarship offer at a Big Ten school, the hometown school, to first round draft picks. Phenomenal growth, and it really speaks to your dedication to the sport. But what did that mean to you to hear your night called on night one?
Oh, it was amazing, and I think there was a lot of strategy that went into that. As far as go back to Purdue versus Toledo, I had decided I was invited to all the All-Star games to play in before the draft, but I declined all of them because me and my agent decided that the best thing that we could show the NFL was how good of an athlete I was. Okay. So if I could train and spend my time training and go there and beat everybody in the 40 and the shuttle and the vertical and broad jump, I beat them in everything, then it's like, okay, we've seen his film. He's in the Big Ten, so he's playing against NFL caliber Big Ten guys. As opposed to if I'm playing in the MAC, they probably want to see me playing against higher caliber players.
True.
So I was able to skip the all-star stuff with Purdue versus maybe not with Toledo. So I just spent 2 months of just training, speed stuff, and it showed at the combine. But yeah, to your point, I watched the NFL draft up in the Purdue press box. They let me have the press box to watch it. So my family and friends were there. Everybody that kind of was part of my journey with that, minus coaches. But I was up there, and I first got a call from Eric Mangini that they were going to draft me the next pick. But everybody was there watching me, so I was trying to be on the phone. And it's like, my words were happy, but I was trying to show something different on my face for everybody around me.
Yep.
And I put the phone down. It says with the 30th pick, the New York Jets select tight end Dustin Keller out of Purdue, and everybody just went crazy. And I don't even think that we waited to see the 31st pick. We all said hello and highs, and we all got into a car and went to Indianapolis to go celebrate. That's where my brother lived at the time. So, it was such a fun night. I'll never forget that.
Man, that's awesome. That's the dream. That's what all the 6 a.m. workouts, the legendary 6 a.m. workouts, and the garbage cans at the end of the field, and all that lifting, all that stuff, those extra reps after practice, it was all for that moment. That's so freaking cool.
Absolutely. And me and my old college teammates at Purdue, we still talk about the 6 a.m. workouts, how those were just makers or breakers. We used to, in different stations, guys would be strategic about it, and they would hide little cups of water in different places so they could get a little break here and there. And I didn't realize how mentally weak I was going into college. I had no idea, especially being a 230-pound receiver, that I'm doing this for the first time. And I outweigh all the other receivers by 20 pounds. I'm dying running. And I didn't realize just how much mental toughness is built throughout your years at Purdue. Because there's actually Coach Lathrop. This is a fun little story if we have a minute.
Yeah.
Coach Lathrop, who is the strength coach, who I honestly give the majority of my success to, is because everything that I was built in the weight room. And I was faster as a 245-pound tight end than I was as a 225-pound receiver, just because it was my first time in the weight room, and I was just a power runner, I guess. And that was Coach Lathrop put me on that path. But we had 6 a.m.s, and by my junior year, these things were just so easy to me. I could do it with a smile on my face. I weighed more and everything, but it didn't matter. It was just so easy to me. And I actually strategically took a cup of water and put it right where everybody could see it. So we finished all of our stations. We were doing our sprinting, and I went to pick up my cup of water, and I took a drink of it, knowing that Coach Lathrop was going to yell at me about it. Keller, what are you doing? There's no water break right now. And I put it down, and I said to Coach Lathrop, I said, Coach Lathrop, they said that Bear Bryant said water makes you weak. And he was like, yeah? I said, well, I'm looking for a challenge. And I finished the drink, and we got on the line, and he just looked me in the eye. I think part of him wanted to laugh a little bit, but then he was in his Lathrop zone. So he hits me at on the line. And I'm sitting there laughing, and all the guys around me man, Dustin, quit messing around, man. We're dying here. But that was my my moment. That's when me and Jim Lathrop, it might have been after sophomore year, that we became tight.
Yeah.
I think I caught him off guard with that one.
Yeah, there's not a lot of people that can get by with that one.
Yeah. Yeah, but those were good times, man.
That's a really fun insight into your character a little bit as a character. You're not the only guy. Ryan Kerrigan, when we had him on earlier in this series, he said the same thing. Remembers that time in college more fondly than anything that happens in the NFL, because you get to that level, it's everybody. It's a business. Everybody's very, they've got their own thing, and they've got things together, and it's not just about the joy of the game. There's joy, but it's not just about the joy of the game and the team.
Absolutely. And especially with Kerrigan, I believe he was a freshman when I was a senior. So he came in as, he wasn't a little guy by any means, but he's a product of Jim Lathrop's weight room. And I think he and I are similar in that way. We got in there, we really bought into it, and the weight room became our favorite place.
Yep.
I don't know if it still stands, but there was power clean records that I had there at Purdue And that's all thanks to Lathrop. That was everything. Explosion was everything. And Kerrigan, I'm sure with their guys, they did it. For me, it was with Stanford Kegler, Bernard Pollard, Anthony Spencer. We would get inside that weight room every day and we would just compete. There would be tons of trash talk back and forth, and you would just compete every single day. Then we go out in the field, and I found out about myself that competition really pushed me to a whole nother gear. So before I would go out there, I would start talking trash to my teammates because once you get out there, you have no choice but to back it up.
Yeah.
You know, there's always Coach Tiller always used to talk about the little guy in their shoulder that's telling you, just ease off a little bit, take a little break. You know, this one doesn't matter. And by going out there and making those comments like, oh, I know one thing, I'm gonna win every last one of these sprints. And then everybody else like, yeah, oh, blah, 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 all this. And I'm like, okay, little guy's off. Now I have to.
Yep.
And you don't have that the same way in the NFL like you do in college. You know, you leave practice at Purdue and you go to your dorm with your teammates. You know, you eat, you have dinner with your teammates. You a lot of times go to class with your teammates. So you're constantly with these guys as opposed to in the NFL, while you are spending a ton of time with them, once the day's over, you're going back to your family or whatever your situation is. And so that, I think that's where the primary big difference is. But also the NFL, everything starts to become such a business. Whenever you have to start dealing with contract time and all that, that stuff starts to kind of pull some of the fun out of all of it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, you had a nice NFL career, played really well with the Jets, signed a free agent contract with the Dolphins, and then had the unfortunate injury that cut it all short. When you look back at sort of where the NFL game was in your time there, like I said, you were kind of on the front edge of the athletic playmaking tight ends, the world that Jimmy Graham's kind of blew up into superstars. I mean, to be a part of that revolution, do you look at it that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that time, like I said before, like the Tony Gonzalez and the Dallas Clarks, that those guys were literally the very front end of it. And I feel like me and some of those guys came right behind them to transform that position. And yeah, it's an exciting thing. You know, a tight end doesn't have to be 6'7", 265 pounds. Like just like a receiver doesn't have to be 6'3", 220. You know, you got the little guys, the Welkers, and you know, there's a spot for that. And for that to happen, somebody has to go out there and prove that this is a thing, that this can work for people. And I think that I'd like to put myself in there with some of those guys at that position.
Yeah. What's it like being a star in New York?
Well, for me, it was awesome. I had like the perfect level of celebrity out there. So if people watch football, they recognize me on the street. It was kind of a, hey, Dustin, great job on Sunday. A little high five, hey, little wave, occasionally like a quick little picture and going. But my boy on the team was Sanchez, and as a quarterback for a New York team, you're experiencing extremes. Yeah. So there'd be times where he and I would be in the city, and instead of like, oh, hey, Dust, how's it going? And then it'd be Mark, oh, Mark, come here. Oh, can I take this picture? Hey, my cousin's on the phone. I'll be sitting next to Mark like, hey, I'll see you later. I'm out of here. Because me and him, we did, even though the Jets and the Giants both have practice facility and stadium in New Jersey, I was the only player between those two teams at that time that lived in New York City. Because I was like, I'm here. I'm going to make the most of this. I like the commute. Gave me time to get my mind right going into football and everything. But he would come in and come hang out with me in the city probably at least a couple times a week. So we spent a lot of time there. And so I got to see the different level of celebrity. And I was very grateful to not have that. You know, I had just enough that you can make a call to a restaurant and sneak in on a 1 to 2 month reservation place.
Right.
And he didn't. He had something different. And I'm glad not to have that.
Those are the fun stories. You know, we all see what happens on the field, but that hanging out after and realizing that, you know, maybe I'm good with my lot in life. That's funny.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I saw. I mean, even the extremes of when I first got there. Of course, Chad Pennington, I worked the whole entire offseason with, but he was traded, or I can't remember how it went when they brought in Brett Favre. And
Yeah.
so, talking about celebrity, this is like a level of somebody you can't leave the house with. But he was the best. He was hilarious and tons of Favre stories. Even in the little time that I had with him, he created lots of stories and just a guy that made it so much fun. When I first got to New York with Eric Mangini, he comes from the Belichick tree, so he was very serious. To the point, even he had me stand up. My first day I got there, he said, "Keller, stand up." As one of the first round picks, always high expectations. He said, "Come down to the front." I stood on the stage with him, and I'm looking around like, okay, what's this? He said, "Okay, everybody in the room, stand up." This was every single player, every single coach, everybody upstairs, from the GM all the way down to, everybody.
Everybody.
And everybody's in there stood up. I was like, okay. He said, "Keller, I want you to name every single person in this room." I kind of leaned over. I'm like, "Coach, I can't even name the tight end room yet. I just got here." He's like, "Name everybody in the room." And I went through and I probably got like 15 people out of like 140. He said, "Sit down. We will keep on doing this until you know every single person that's in this room." And I eventually got it because I was scared to death and I had to figure it out. The player development guy printed off pictures and names of everybody. And I was studying that more than I was my playbook.
That's wild.
And
Yeah,
so,
football, you got to learn these names.
yeah. I mean, then we go into the preseason and I'm always taking notes during all of the offensive stuff like a crazy person because I'm scared that I'm going to get called out. But he's talking about the defensive keys to victory. He said, "Keller, stand up." I was like, oh my gosh, we already went through offense. Okay. He said, "What are the defensive keys to victory?" I was like, "Coach, I play offense." He's like, "What are the defensive keys?" I was like, I had a couple people next to me trying to whisper them to me. I'm like, I don't know, Coach. He said, "Sit down. You need to know every facet of the game plan." I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to drop some of my offensive study time and start studying the defensive stuff. But the reason I say all this is because when Favre came in, the moment that Favre came in, Mangini, it was a 180. He switched him overnight. He was so fun. Pardon my French. Our practices were just such tight ass practices. But then Favre got there and we were loose. He would go by, Favre would be coming out. He would smack Mangini on the butt real hard, and you would, for 1 second, get a little smirk from Mangini, and it would go away because he was all about his business. But that completely changed everything.
Yeah, you get a legend like that running the show, and it's hard to stay a hard ass,
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I'm grateful because that rookie year was going to be tough before that happened. Even though Chad Pennington, I love Chad Pennington, and I think we would have done great things together my rookie year, and because I spent a lot of time with him in the offseason. But it was so much fun having Favre in the corner.
That's so cool. Well, what are you doing now? What keeps you busy these days?
I'm a franchisee for a few brands, but my big one is McAllister's Deli.
Okay,
and
love that place.
Yeah, it's been a great thing for me. I bought my first stores in 2008. Is actually the first thing I purchased when I got my first big check. I bought 6 McAllister's Delis, 3 in Charleston, South Carolina, and 3 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. My uncle is the restaurant operator, and he had been for 20 to 25 years at this point. Now he's going on about 40. But that was just where the best opportunity was. We've been evaluating these things for a really long time. And so back up a little bit. When I was at Purdue, my sophomore year, when it started looking like I could possibly be an NFL talent, who knows, but we'll see. I used to have quarterly meetings with my uncle. He would drive down from Ohio and we would sit down, whether it was at Triple X or wherever there on campus, and we would talk about different situations. Like, okay, right now, if you were to get drafted, you'd be slotted here. You would get a signing bonus to this, and you should treat it like this. And we would go through all this stuff. And ever since my sophomore year, we would go through all this stuff. Well, junior year, I had a lot of momentum, and I was actually going to leave for the NFL because things were going really well. But then I tore up my shoulder, and I still had a decent season. They said I could have left, but I wasn't that high draft pick I wanted to be. And so we went back to the drawing board, like, yeah, if you were to leave right now, here's what it would mean. And we go through all these different business situations. Fast forward to my senior year, it's like, okay, before this combine, you're looking like you're probably going to be a second round pick. But here's what this might be if you do get in the first round. We talked about situations, but everything played out. You fast forward to not even a year after that. We knew where I was drafted, kind of the signing bonus I was going to get, and how much money I could put to aside to invest in whatever this thing may be, and get my mom a house. And so McAllister's Deli just happened to be the best opportunity there. And that was 6 stores in 2008. Now, 16 years later, we've got significantly more, and we're also in North Carolina and Georgia and Alabama as well. Yeah. So it's been a great thing for me, and it's also afforded me to, it was definitely an assist in the decision not to come back to football, because I think a lot of people look at it like I had this knee injury and that was it, couldn't come back. But I'd like to think that I rehabbed it enough to where there was a lot of teams that had interest. People wanted me to come in, and I, in that sense, went out on my own terms. I was like, you know what, I'm ready for this next phase. I want to be a businessman and a father, not an older father than a businessman.
Yeah.
And the McAllister stuff has afforded me to be the person that I want to be after football. Now, I never got that huge second contract that everybody kind of hopes for, going for, but I like to think that I made good enough decisions up to that point. Not perfect. I blew stuff on idiotic stuff in New York City, but I made good enough decisions to where I could be like, okay, this is what I want to do now.
That's so awesome to have that freedom, to have that mind and a support system that's looking out for you, from before day one, from, hey, here's what we could do. Love that you met with your uncle. That's a great story. Awesome success. Very cool.
Awesome. No, it's been great. And minus the rehab from the injury, I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was a brutal way to go out, but I love that, again, instead of saying, maybe I can come back, maybe I can scratch one more contract out of this and not be able to walk, 15 years
exactly.
From now, you made that right choice.
And I think that I was lucky enough to kind of learn and see from other people's situations. There's the 2 types of people: the people that spend the first 5 to 7 years just trying to make it into the NFL. And, in your professional life, that's a lot of lost time.
Yeah.
To be 8 years out of college and basically starting your first year in whatever it is that you're trying to do. And then on the flip side is guys that are trying to hang on to it, and spend 4 or 5 years trying to get back on a roster, spending tons of money, and it doesn't work out. Now, it's not to say that people shouldn't be trying to push for it, but I think that's a thing. If it's not happening in the first couple of years, you just got to move on with life,
Yep. Yeah. Move on with life, or life's going to move on without you.
Absolutely. It doesn't let you rewind. There's no rewind button. It's funny because I know everybody at some point is thinking, you know what, if I ever do get a chance at that again, well, it's not happening. There's no rewind button. All you can do is fix now and into the future. And I think that was a big part of why I made the decision that I did.
That's awesome. Well, the future continues to be bright for you, it sounds like. We'll end it here. This has been great catching up, and thank you for years worth of memories and stories.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you taking the time, and